Okay, so here we're back with the puzzle that we started with last week. I'm going to go through some thoughts on this and review some of the discussion, and then I'm also going to end this video. So if you don't want to hear all the discussion, you can jump to the end of this. I'm going to just end this video with a part two to this same game. I think later this week I'm going to turn around kind of quicker instead of waiting a week to have a follow-up. We're going to turn around midweek, and I'm going to hope, as long as I can get around work, to put up a answer to the second part of this video, as well as start another one, as we've had some viewers adding in some good picks already, and I want to get a couple of those in before I go on vacation for a week coming up here in a little bit. So anyways, if you want to get to just jump to the second part of the puzzle, I'm going to hopefully bookmark it in the comments if I can figure out how to do that. Otherwise, let's get discussing. So I want to talk about this setup and the strength of this setup. So the big thing for the Germany is they're putting a lot of pressure up here on the Eastern Front, and in so doing, I think I mentioned in the last video, they're guaranteed to either stack Ukraine, Caucasus, or West Russia. There's nothing you can do about that. One of these has to be given up, possibly two if we're not careful. So that's the strength of this. And if you just completely take Ukraine, they've got a big punch coming with 4 infantry and artillery and 10 tanks coming up right behind into Ukraine here. So there's a lot of big punch coming right afterwards. And if you do go this way, you leave your back door open a little bit where they could get 4 infantry and 4 fighters hitting West Russia. And if you don't take care of Bello, these 4 tanks could go through there. So there's a lot of pressure right away up here. And to help defend it, we could bring, as I think some people mentioned, some of these fighters from into West Russia. We also got the U.S. fighter, and we can also, if we do the cruiser fighter kill here, we do have a UK fighter so that we can bring up to West Russia as well. Because we really, in this case, it's kind of a gift to have the carrier in India survive. So we're going to take advantage of that. So we can commit those fighters into West Russia or Caucasus, wherever we're planning on going to be stacking and staying at, but we're pre-committing prior to Russia attacking here. So we have to have a plan already in motion before Russia does the attack. And that was the tricky part, is do we go by faith? Do we trust the numbers, so to speak? Do we trust the dice? And then where do we go for that? So I'm going to talk a little bit more what we did in just a moment, but I'm going to come back up into here and talk about this. So the idea, if they do have a sub and cruiser left over, and with bringing the battleship out this way, is generally you don't like the Germans having free reign in the Atlantic. So although we can get a destroyer bomber, which does have odds on the battleship, it's not great odds. So U.S. does have the possibility. I think a lot of people talked about in the comments that we should go ahead and take care of the German Navy here, the battleship, using our UK. But the problem is that means these fighters then are not going over to West Russia. So that is a bit of a concern there then, because that takes that much more defense that we have potentially into West Russia for Germany too. So real quick, I'm going to talk a little bit. My game against Snake, my one-on-one game against Snake, he actually had 2 subs survive up here. Everything else was roughly the same setup. I had a little more infantry. I think I had 8 actually survive West Russia. I think he had 7 infantry in Ukraine. Little things, but for the most part, the same setup, other than he had 2 subs and a cruiser living up here. Now, in the tournament, I maybe was being a little big-headed, but I'd already won one other match due to dice, and I felt pretty good about the other when I was playing this one, so I felt like I'd have a good chance of moving on in the tournament. So I decided to not do what I thought was the best move, but I wanted to do something a little bit crazy and aggressive, because one thing I think that everybody in the comments kind of agreed upon is you gotta treat this aggression with aggression. So I went aggressive and risky, in that I went ahead and did a C Zone 37 attack. And so I pulled it up here real quick. So this is the result of it. Um, so anytime the battleship goes out there, I like to have that destroyer come back because then only need one fighter to live, and C Zone 35 is stacked when I build a carrier and two destroyers. I sent the transport actually and did the two infantry versus one infantry in Borneo and won that. So I was trying to make as much of a headache quickly over here for Japan. So if he's going to be aggressive on Russia, I'm going to get aggressive on Japan. And so here we set this up. I pulled my transport back this direction. So now I've actually got a fighter and two guys potentially on DEI if I chose to, or whatever. And then meanwhile, so that went well enough there. And then on US's turn, he could not do Pearl because again he's getting his fighters and bombers and everything set up over there. So I came in and got my US fleet set up here. So on Japan 2, he did come back and retake Borneo there and then pulled his fighters back and prepared for the KJF. But, this is a pretty yummy situation here where I got them situated. Now you're going to notice West USA is a little bit off, and that's because I chose to use my UK to clear C Zone 7, and I was going to use the bomber destroyer for US to clear the battleship. That failed. So although I built my two subs, two destroyers, and carrier as per normal, I decided to bring my cruiser back here, do a build here with my US, and I was going to be able to manage this battleship wherever it went, other than if it went back into the Med. So I was feeling okay with that. One of the things you may say, well, that's going to mess up the Pacific, but I've already got three destroyers and a carrier over here I don't normally have on the UK side, and US 1, US 2, here in 3, here in 4, US 5, they're at DEI with UK on UK 6. So we're still getting my stacking by turn 5 mentality, even if I come that direction with the fleet. So I was okay with this. It did leave that we were going to be looking at an interesting battle if he decided to try to go for the Sea Lion, because that was a possibility. And then came Russia's turn, and this did not go well. So I did use Russia to clear the transport because I used everything to clear C Zone 7, and I didn't even bother with Belarusia here. I was planning on strafing and retreating to West Russia. I had that all planned out nice and smoothly and I want to say I had like a 96% chance. The first round of dice rolls in Ukraine went nine units opposite of what it was supposed to. I think it was like I had 4 less hits and he got 5 more defensive hits or something like that. I forget exactly, but it was extreme. And I immediately came back here and looked at, okay, well, what if I retreat now? And even at that point, if I had retreated, he was just still going to blow out West Russia with the tanks and the infantries and the fighters. So I went ahead and tried to follow through, and it just got worse. Well, I don't think it got any worse. It just didn't get any better. So I ended up forfeiting here at this point because he's got 14 tanks coming, and I've got 3, well, plus my whatever 7-8 units built. It was not going to go well. So I ended up just calling this game here because even this fighter, I either have to find him to UK or I was going to have to land him in one of these where he's going to have numbers. So in any case, it did not go well. So that's how just the dice going wrong can make it go poorly. And you have to make that decision of what you're going to do with Russian attack on Ukraine early. So back to our game here. Uh, what we ended up having, let's see here. Here we go. Um, so UK's turn went. Again, he didn't have anybody in C Zone 7, so it was an easy kill for us to take out the fleet with the UK, as well as drop a fleet and go ahead and trade France. So with one transport here and us planning on going KGF, I was okay with the 4 units defending versus 5 fighters. Um, not concerned about that. As others mentioned, we consolidated the fleet back into C Zone 17 here, and I did bring our fighter up to West Russia because we decided that in our aggression we were going to either take Ukraine or retreat to West Russia. So I went ahead and brought the fighter up to West Russia and hoping that it went well. The 2 fighters over here, one cleared the C-Zone 5, but the other one's destroyer fighter bomber clearing the battleship. I did bring the bomber down here to Transjordan instead of going to Caucasus, which would have been the go-to because obviously Caucasus isn't a heavy threat and there's no reason to put the bomber down there where it's possibly going to get killed anyways. Um, the nice thing is it does give us a little round 3, 3 steps or UK2. We could hit Italy potentially with a little med shuck from UK, so to speak. Um, and otherwise, we did the 3 infantry carrier destroyer build was our build, and yes, we did the cruiser fighter attack here. So the big thing is that we decided I did move one UK guy into Caucasus because if we strafed, our whole goal was to get him down to tanks, and that way he'd have to use either one tank and hope for a 1v1 and maybe the one guy hit, or he has to put 2 tanks into Caucasus to trade Caucasus if he chose to. So, and then we would be able to kill those 2. So we were trying to make it a little more costly rather than getting a walk-in in there. So here's Japan's turn. I wanted to show this real quick before we get to the final step of today. And so interestingly, they built a complex here on Kwangtung, as well as 2 transports, not your usual Japan purchase. Now again, we already know they're planning on being aggressive, so oh, did I skip? Oh, I got out of order. So this is after Russia hit. So this is after Japan and Russia, sorry. So you can see Russia did go well. But in any case, just talking about Japan's setup here, we knew these guys, Emre and Snake, were top-notch players. There's a plan coming. We know there's going to be aggression with Germany. But, where most German tank rushes fail is you can just stop the Germans and then it's over. But knowing these guys, we knew they had a plan, and the plan's going to have a coordinated Japan attack coming quickly as well. So, as predicted, they did put the 6 fighters and a bomber over here in Kwangtung. So, this was after Russia again. So we preemptively put another fighter, the U.S. fighter, in there, and we were ready to have the tank in there if we needed to defend. But we ended up taking Ukraine. We took this battle and we were okay with a strafe. If it left 1 or 2 tanks left, then we were going to retreat. Otherwise, we were continuing through and battling it out. So we did go ahead and battle it out. I mapped everything out on an Excel sheet of, what's the IPC overall economics of taking Ukraine versus strafing and letting them take Caucasus. And in the end, it actually showed if all dice were average, there was a very slight economic advantage to actually taking Ukraine. It was like 0.6 of an IPC difference. So, but the average was going to leave us with 3 tanks here. So we said if we strafed and got them down to 1 or 2 tanks, retreating would be the better option then. As it turned out, we ended up clearing them. The interesting thing here, we did need to do the Bello Basil first, because if this failed, then we were going to have to retreat because otherwise we were leaving our fighters out to dry. So this catches us up into the game. Germany goes. They clear, take back France. As expected, they stacked Ukraine. They got a couple of fighters up here, 3 fighters down here, and kind of shuffled people around a little bit. So this is going to be the next puzzle piece. It's going to be UK turn 2. I want to see and hear what would be your purchases in India and in Britain for UK2. What do you do with the fleet up here, here, and your units across the Middle East here? Um, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts. I'm just going to flip back here just because so we can see it better. What role is this factory going to do? And just so remember, he's got a tank, he's got an infantry, 2 artillery sitting in here, 4 infantry in here. Um, before we take our UK2 turn, we've got our tank in Egypt, 1 and 1, so you can see where our units are, where the UK units are. In the other picture, you can't see it too well, so I'm going to come back into this one. And again, so what's the threat? What's your goal? Now, again, they've got this 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 units threatening Caucasus, while also having 13, 14, 19, 21, 22 units threatening West Russia. So we're not going to be able to hold both these. You know, Germany 3, we're going to have to give something up. What do we give up? Do we give up Caucasus, which has more IPC in it? Or do we give up West Russia, which has the most unique positioning that can challenge all these territories that Russia's bordering on? Again, because UK has to go first, and if we're going to use any UK troops in this, we got to decide this now. What are we going to do? So, what's your threats here? What's your builds? What's your actions? And then kind of, because we are setting it up, although we're talking about UK's turn, we do need to know what are we going to do with the Americans and the Russians too. What's the plan? So let me know what your thoughts are here. We're now Germany. We had a good run, but at the same time, Germany is now a big threat right off the bat here. So give it a few days. Like I said, probably midweek. I'm going to come up with just show how this little bit played out, and glad to hear your responses. See what your thoughts are on the Allies' turn. From 2 to Germany 3, and we'll have another puzzle set, completely different game going, starting at the next video.